Oops. Yeah. Always forgetting something. Good day, guys. Yeah, I'm playing around with the back screens and all that. You know me. I've got to make my life a bit more interesting. You know, sometimes it gets boring. You know, make myself more colourful this way. I will be looking on this screen over here because the biggest problem, Bart's talked about it as well, with StreamYard, and I don't know what's happening, but it seems like in my list over here, I don't get actually the notifications as quick for whatever reason. They don't sort of come through. Sometimes they come through normally. Sometimes they just get delayed. So I may have to read off that screen. So you know what I'm actually doing is reading your questions, and I won't be popping them up on the screen directly. We're still waiting on Jared. I've sent him a link, so he shouldn't be too far away. He's probably preparing his food, his meat. I've got my brie. I've got to get rid of this damn background. Give me a sec. There is a point of, let me just position it better. It's a bit too, nope, cancel that. What am I doing? Hold on. G'day, mate. I just crashed. So basically, yes.
We're back.
I think we're back. Yes, we are back. Yeah, it all went pear shaped, and so it just froze. Everything just froze. I tried to basically change the back screen and all that. It just, for whatever reason, there wasn't a connection, and it just went really crazy. I just need to bring on the other screen. I'm having problems with StreamYard. I mean, it's not only me, it's Bart's been having problems. And even yesterday when I was doing the European one, I noticed that continuously I had like delays on the stuff coming across. It just wouldn't happen. I'm going, what the bloody hell's happening? And sometimes it would come through normally, and then sometimes it would just hold there for quite a while, and I'd have to read the question off the side panel because I just couldn't, do anything. So it was absolutely driving me mad.
We're all good.
So just want to make sure that it's actually working properly.
Looks like it from my end anyway.
Okay, good. And I've just checked it on my end, so it looks, so it looks all good.
Doesn't hurt to make sure.
Yeah, precisely, because I just want to make sure that because I can see myself on screen here. So yeah, oof. Well, crazy times. It must the actual server must be infected with corona.
Man, that joke is getting so much mileage right now. Xbox Live servers have been having troubles too because there's been such an increase in volume of people online, and everybody's. I've heard that joke a million times too.
Yeah,
Xbox Live must have coronavirus.
And I think that's the real story of the whole thing. Good to know it's sunny in Seattle. Yeah, that's the big thing. And I'm just going through. And where is he? I've been wondering about that. I haven't seen him for a while. Is he okay?
Sorry, I just had to respond to something. Is you okay?
Yep. And I'm just, going through.
There's the joke again. Yep.
Exactly. Perfect dragon. Yeah, it's really fucking up my nanomotors. Expecting something from Luke shortly. Yes.
Brie. I haven't had brie in a little while. Sounds good right now. Oh,
my French brie. Jealous, Jared?
Is that a portion that you're going to eat over the course of this stream?
This will be annoying.
Do you eat that much brie at once?
Oh, sometimes even more.
Oh yeah.
How do you think I get my minoquinone for?
I don't know what that is. I'm just joking.
What? You do. I've said it so many bloody times. On my streams and on Bart's streams that have probably driven everybody crazy by this stage about it.
Well, I've just got ribeye tomahawk grills. Those are real grill marks.
Yes, exactly. Very nice.
Out there braving the snow with the charcoal barbecue today. Tastes like summer. She actually brought me a steak during Bart's stream, and I didn't want to call attention to it for fear of seeming too decadent. Like I'm just like reclining with grapes being fed.
The Roman position, posture.
Yes.
Yep, it did. At least some people were concerned. That was your comment.
Someone said I'm too tired from Bart's stream afterward.
Well, I did come half an hour earlier today, and sort of as Pim and Bart have been moving to earlier time slots, I've sort of moved in that direction as well. So I sort of don't want to creep too much, because then somebody's apparently going to do something, and then it's going to be all hell,
Right.
In that regard.
Have I done that? Have I liked this yet? Yes, I have.
Anyway, we better get to questions. We've had enough fun with all these sort of...
Yes, this is a very serious business.
You've been...
My lack of pants.
Scurrilous on Luke's side.
Well, when Bart invited me to his stream earlier today, I was actually doing my home sauna, which for me is a very hot bath. So I didn't have pants on then either.
Yeah, my receptors are not working very well. It's sort of an interaction between my receptors and StreamYard. I've been telling you boys, those blue rays are really sort of mucking up StreamYard circadian rhythms. I'll be suggesting anything. Yes. Yes, those damn carbs. Total leverage biological actions as a smoke through for economic collapse. Yep, he's really had it. Look. I think the coronavirus is real. Don't get me wrong, guys. But I think it's been handled appallingly. Us bigots are all fine, mate. All fine. It's been quite appalling the way it's been sort of managed. I mean, if you basically allow herd, because it tends to be it's not as severe as SARS as a respiratory inducing virus, but it's pretty bad, especially for people who are vulnerable, older, that may have underlying conditions and all that. So if you do herd immunity, you're basically going to kill a lot of people. If you lock down the economy, you're going to kill a lot of people economically. And I've said, the logical way, but politicians never think logically, would be basically to isolate those vulnerable groups until we can get some sort of medication or achieve herd immunity within the population after a couple of months. People that are less vulnerable, they'll just get a bit of a cold, a bit of a sniffle, stuff like that. Some, maybe a few people slightly more severe, but because there's so many people with severe conditions or vulnerabilities that are isolated, you'll have people, the medical system will be able to handle the small numbers that may crop up as a consequence of, getting herd immunity without collapsing the economy, wiping out a whole lot of small businesses and really destroying people's lives for decades, because that's what happens, especially if people are in that old age bracket. They've built a whole lot of assets over a very long time. Who's going to pay for that? There's not enough in the tax dollars or enough money printing that can cover that. So it's quite irresponsible how the governments are handling this. And even one of the guys, when I actually made the suggestion at work, said, well, we could always put them on a pleasure cruise for a couple of months. That's an option. That support that industry, wouldn't go under, So, you'd put doctors on there with them, and you would basically only test those people that are the vulnerable people that you're isolating. So you can actually, that are going to go on the pleasure cruises. So you wouldn't need as much testing sort of equipment. So there'd be less cost in that. The cost of basically closing down the economy is much larger than basically sending a whole lot of vulnerable people on pleasure cruises with doctors. in comparison. So, I mean, there are better ways of actually managing this sort of situation. But I think at the same time, there are many governments around the world that are on a power-hungry opportunity and are using this for that purpose as well. So there is a lot of, skullduggery because they can see that economically, they've built up this massive pool of debt worldwide like they did just before the Great Depression. And, that will make the natives very upset if the whole thing goes pear-shaped at some point.
Yeah,
so there is, they could be using this as an excuse to basically, bring in legislation that could be used later on for other things. That's the danger.
There is, I saw a Politico article from today saying, here, I'll send you the link, saying the Department of Justice seeks new emergency powers amid the pandemic. One of the requests to Congress would allow the department to petition a judge to indefinitely detain someone during an emergency. So it just seems that anytime there's an emergency like this, there seems to be, those unscrupulous people,
characters,
that want to railroad through some
erode people's liberties
policy.
So and that's the. Can you put on screen?
I just sent you the link in the private chat of StreamYard there.
Okay. Let me grab that. Hold on.
But I mean, it's just one example of an emergency response being used to, for an opportunistic abuse of legislative powers, the same as the Patriot Act from 9/11. And I'm sure there are other examples that aren't coming to me at this exact moment. But
yep.
But yeah, so it's those sorts of egregious overreaches that sort of fuel the conspiracy-minded fires.
Well, precisely. And do you blame people? So do you blame people? Let me just bring that onto the screen. It's really scary what's happening in that regard. Except. So, Department of Justice seeks new emergency powers amid coronavirus pandemic. So that's, we won't read it out now because, I mean, you've given us the gist of things. If people want to go and read it, that's the URL there. So, yeah, fuck it. That is frightening. God almighty. Yeah, it definitely is scary. It just seems like we're slowly there's this slow creep towards authoritarianism worldwide.
Yeah, using safety as the justification.
Yeah, basically, keeping all the snowflakes safe and happy.
So, I can completely understand where some of the more conspiracy-minded people, like say Haleman, and I'm not using his name to throw him under the bus, just as somebody I know
I understand
is sort of going around the other direction with this. That it's not hard at all to see where he gets his mistrust of authority from, and I completely agree that there are certain elements of this that it feels like there could be something amiss.
I was as a youngster, I was a bit of a radical, and I even wrote. I remember this was when I even actually wrote an article in one of the anarchist magazines. So I was, I'm not that way sort of inclined now. I sort of believe in direct democracy and other things, which anarchists don't believe in. So I have a very different view nowadays. But I can understand how young people would feel like that. There's this sort of disconnect, and they feel that they're marginalised, they're not taken serious, that they're ignored, their concerns are ignored in many cases. And whenever I have chats, I sort of sympathise with a lot of those things. We were all young once upon a time, and we all felt the same way. So sometimes we get on the treadmill of life and all that, and we sort of sometimes forget those things.
But then it goes far enough that, as Luke here has kind of pointed to, that you're getting this phenomenon of virus denialism where it goes all the way to the point of
I know it's
disbelieving that a virus is even a thing, and people talking about it's impossible to transmit, and it's never been proven, and microscope imagery is all fake, and that
Yeah, I
To
know.
me, the
It's
depth
gone
of analysis on that
crazy.
to me is about as good as flat Earth.
Precisely. Was this the one? Oops. No, it's further down. It must be further down.
He just said virus denialism. All the derp kids are doing it.
How far down it is? Oh, anyway, you've read it out. Oh, yeah. Look, there's a lot of that. Unfortunately, out there, you sort of have to keep. Look, if you take a look at the coronavirus, is this sort of strain is a slight. The changes in mutation from the information that I've got is slightly different compared to previous ones, and in such, it's not as dangerous as SARS or MERS, which were far. I mean, MERS was nearly close to Ebola. It's really quite lethal, the one that in the Middle East. But in terms of its ability to spread, it's still it can spread much faster. It's sort of its infection rate is more like a rate of 3.28 compared to the general flu, which is 1.28. So it's a hell of a lot more contagious in that regard. But at the same time, it's not as lethal as SARS, which is important. That's why this sort of clamp down on the whole of society is a bit overkill and a bit crazy in that regard.
Yeah, there's the numbers that I'm seeing coming out of Western nations where the standard of care and access is a little better than in China, and specifically in Hubei province there. It seemed to indicate that it's not going to be as severe as the rest as it was in Wuhan specifically. Now, obviously, I don't want to promise hope, and this is an emergent situation, and it could be humbling that it gets really severe, and I look like a complete idiot for saying that.
Exactly.
But there are preliminary numbers coming out showing that I've seen as high as 99% reported that of the people who died had pre-existing conditions that were related to diet and lifestyle, meaning basically that they were obese or smoked or had heart conditions and these sorts of things, right? So there certainly is a very, very strong element of fear-mongering going on, which speaks to sort of your nuance that you're trying to highlight there about that. We do have other instances of illnesses to compare this to, and we do know how to contextualize it for the severity. And yeah, you're still just seeing worst case promoted in the media.
Yeah. Look, the media's, they like a bad story. And so, rather than actually, being critical and saying, well, like traditional media used to be, and saying, well, there are better ways without devastating the economy. There are better approaches. We've got this sort of very narrow sort of approach. Let's just basically, it's going to kill us all, sort of approach, scaring the living daylights of everyone. They're all down at the supermarket, congregating in large groups. The disconnect. I mean, wouldn't you want to isolate yourself if it's that dangerous, rather than actually like a pack of mad animals being down at the supermarket? Literally congregating very close to each other.
Yeah. So
it's just.
I guess to clarify my position on it, I'm not at all trying to downplay the severity of the situation, but I am trying to say that the rhetoric of the narrative that's being promoted is unhelpful, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't help absolutely anyone, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't realise how dangerous. I always say that I give an example that when you're on an ancestral diet, you're going to be less prone to a lot of these sort of infections. It doesn't mean you're not going to get it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you may not have certain underlying issues that you haven't resolved. You may not get it worse, or it may put you at that close, threshold of death. But, and that's an important thing. There are differences. When you take a look at, you have to look at historical some stuff. And when you look at when new viruses came in from the Euro-Asiatic sort of region because you've got the three continents which connect through the Middle East. And this area has been pretty much a transfer, a whole lot of, because of trade, because of war, because of a lot of things, a whole lot of viruses and bacteria throughout this whole part of the world. So immunity levels are very different between those populations, the survivors of those populations, compared to today's. But when those viruses, and this is really important, hit the Americas, look at the North American Plain Indians and all that, they weren't decimated to the same level that were on the animal-based diets. You look at the sort of the agriculturalists or the civilizations of agriculture, their whole ruling classes, their intellectual classes were wiped out. Their whole societies collapsed. For a very long time, we didn't know who built those structures in those parts of Americas because of that. And it was basically because of the diet. Didn't give them the robustness to withstand, where, North American Plain Indians, they were still around. Their chiefs were still around. They were still bloody quite good warriors and still fighting the hell out of the new colonists. So they weren't suffering at the same level. Yes, some of the more vulnerable people, older people and all that, who may have had injuries or whatever and stuff like that, they were slightly more vulnerable. They were taken out. But the general population wasn't hit as badly, which shows that a good nutrition, animal-based nutrition, is somewhat protective. Not 100%, let's be honest. And there are differences in the way, certain viruses work compared to other viruses, and the level of susceptibility varies. So we can't, sort of say like 100%, because that is sheer speculation, and, that's not what we do on this, live stream ever. But, we have to consider, those risks and, and the economic problems that are being caused. It's, quite horrendous and worrying for all of us, for our families and all that. And as I said, while I'm not a believer in supplements, you know me quite well on that point, the high in deuterium, which isn't good, anything that's highly processed high in deuterium. But, and I always, preface it in this sort of terms. When you're in a situation where you're in a winter type environment and you're coming, and this is what I think Italy and all these parts are very, have been hit so severely, Europe and certain parts of North America, is because they had, you're basically, your T cells have got vitamin D receptors. They require vitamin D to basically do their job. Now, as you come into spring, that is when you've got your lowest level of vitamin D sort of status. And that's the problem when you get to that stage. And that's why Europe is being hit so severely. If it was in summer, it'd be less severe, less of a problem. And, it's winter where, towards the end of winter, where most of the severe respiratory infections and deaths occur even from the common flu. That's the problem. So, and this is where governments really dropped the mark and didn't make the connection between vitamin D status and basically they should have supplemented 4,000 IUs, fuck the deuterium, it's not as if, for a couple of months it's going to be a problem in that regard. I mean, even the seed oils that they use, in cheap supplements, even that's less. I mean, I encourage people to use olive oil based or liposomal or stuff like that, vitamin D. But, I usually basically try to get enough sun through the summer, and I go to Bali in winter to sort of build up my levels. So when spring comes along, I've got enough, vitamin D in my status, so I don't get these colds. And I tend to, now that I do that, I don't have problems through winter like I used to. I've got some of the lowest sick leave to, in that regard. But, you're talking about a whole population. They're not carnivores out there. And, as a government, they should be basically, considering these things, and they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was actually outside in the sun today, even though it was like 0 degrees Celsius with like a -6 degree wind chill. It's like about 31 degrees Fahrenheit with a 21 degree Fahrenheit wind chill for Americans. And it was I don't know, I felt like it was worth it to get a little bit of grounding, a little bit of sunlight. And like sunlight from the source, or vitamin D from the source, as it were. Now, Chris Kresser was recommending vitamin A and vitamin D supplementation through Whole Foods, obviously, if possible, but for the reasons that you mentioned, that it will help your immune system function. And then he walked it back because he feels that vitamin D may upregulate ACE2, which enables the virus to hijack your cells more easily. I wonder about your thoughts about that.
Yeah, look, remember last week I actually mentioned that tobacco smoking also upregulates ACE2 as well. So it's not only, there are other like environmental things that actually have that effect. Another effect is cadmium, which is in polluted air and stuff like that, can actually have an effect. So we've got a lot of other factors. It's not, and the other thing is that is very high doses. I'm not recommending high doses. Most studies show that to support good immune function for respiratory infections and all that, 4,000 to 6,000 is just enough, which is what you would get normally from the sun. That would be sort of the same similar levels. So I'm not talking about extremely high. I wouldn't recommend that because it creates a lot of fat-soluble vitamin imbalances. But at the same time, I'm not, I'm not basically, I think he's confused because at the end of the day, you need vitamin D for the T cell receptors. Also, when you're basically getting a virus attack and stuff like that, which is compromising the immune system, and you've got basically pneumonia type bacteria and other stuff that are actually increasing, they're also increasing the upregulation of collagen degrading enzymes, MMPs, and they tend to basically cause havoc in your lungs. And so you need that additional vitamin D to regulate and keep them under control and suppress them, inhibit them so they don't overexpress. So it's a more complex picture, more, like Luke would say, it's a tapestry of things that are at play,
Rich tapestry.
Exactly, a rich tapestry. And so,
it seems pretty short-sighted to me to recommend against vitamin D. I mean, he's making it sound like you shouldn't get any vitamin D for your immune system function.
He actually said the same about retinol.
Right.
Yeah. He's wrong, completely wrong. Initially, his first recommendation of high doses was wrong. But even high doses, we know the body has the ability to deal with both fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins, unless you've got some sort of unusual, preconditions or, certain strange things, it's less of an issue. And at the same time, if your vitamin D and retinol are working properly and your immune system is working properly, it's less of an issue. But if you're basically smoking, as I said last time on my I can't remember which one it was the first Corona one that I did or the second one that I said about smoking, and how, but at the same time I also mentioned about carnitine, and carnitine, which is in meat, also inhibits this sort of hygiene effect through the lymphatic system, So, because you've got, your lymph nodes get inflamed, as I said, so to keep it simple for people, so animal foods again. But as I said, you could supplement as a short-term thing with extra carnitine to sort of, support that a bit more, especially, for your families, I said as well, that may not be on a carnivore diet. So some of those suggestions were not merely for carnivores, they were for the general public, because unfortunately the general public is, their diet is shit, and most people's families, but it's easier to basically sell your family, tell them to take a vitamin D supplement and use carnitine, you know what I mean, than basically try to convince them to an MMK, then to convince them to start eating animal foods and stuff like that, and brie for their, like I am for my MK4. I just need to get a bit of MK4, guys.
Brie and ribeye. I'll be the ribeye to your brie, Harry.
People could end up construing the wrong idea from that. No, we will not be exposing ourselves either, Necro. Is she on here somewhere? She's probably already, that's going through her mind. Yep, very concerning, these governments, including yours. Yep. Yes, and it's well, sometimes.
Yeah,
As I remember, I just have a bit more knowledge than the rest of the dumb monkeys on this planet. So let's not get too carried away.
My concern with this massive government response, I'm not at all saying that this is not warranted. I'm not at all saying that we shouldn't be protecting vulnerable people from it, which is, ostensibly the goal. But I'm concerned of what the downstream effects of the supply chain disruption are going to be.
Massive.
Massive, exactly.
Don't worry, I'll just and that's the big concern that I also have, that basically we're getting into a situation where things are she can't help herself, I know. Yep. Plenty of media hype, as Dragon Chuck is basically pointing out. There's too much media hype and not good information, not good quality information or good suggestions.
No. I'm seeing case studies of like 12 patients being reported with like probability percentages as if it means anything. And they're being used to promote worst case scenarios like permanent lung damage, which is just so irresponsible.
Exactly. And the thing is, is anybody actually mentioning vitamin D? Nobody. There's a few people. There's very few people. There's a small, I have to be honest. But when I started mentioning the importance of respiratory infections and vitamin D, there were very few people out there. It was only, there was a doctor who's actually a nurse, who's an academic in the UK, I think, that was actually by one of my followers actually mentioned the actual doctor. I went to his, and he's got pretty good information. And there was very few other people. Lately, more people have come out, but they're actually talking about taking this supplement and that nutraceutical and all that. And I'm going, well, no, things that help the immune system, things like zinc, selenium, these sort of things are animal foods. It's animal foods primarily, the fat soluble vitamins. These are the important things that are basically going to give you that protection. Less sugar in the diet. So that sort of stuff is very important, that people need to remember in that regard. Healthy mitochondria, so some exercise but not excessive. As I said, if you're not sick, you're well in that regard, you don't have underlying conditions, do a 3-day fast to, and isolate yourself when you're doing it, to sort of, which I didn't, but anyway, that's another story. I did 3.5-day fast this week.
Yeah, fast
while I was at work.
Your immune system, but only after the 3rd day of your fast, right?
Exactly.
You're actually a little bit weaker before that point because your body started recycling your white blood cells, and
exactly. Yeah. And it's coming, and after about 3.5 days, starts coming down the effect.
Right.
So basically, you really need to, even your metabolic rate sort of starts dropping a bit there. So you're really at that point, you need to basically just go back to eating normal, and that's what I did. So yeah, a couple of light meals, and then I had a bit of roast in that regard. But that's pretty much sort of reset my immune system, and basically set me up slightly better for when it does come along in that regard. So it's really important that people sort of what were you saying?
Was just in response. He was asking why people were saying Toyota Corolla instead of naming the virus, and I was just explaining that there have been there's been some YouTube censorship of streams going on. So obviously you're not concerned about demonetization for this one, so we can say coronavirus. But
no, God.
On some others where people are worried about that, it's automatically getting flagged and taken down and demonetized for having that word in it. So Toyota Corolla is catching on as its own alternative.
It is. But I mean, I don't really give a shit.
No,
because basically I'm on the interweb, so to speak, or the web, primarily just to get information out and have help people. That's my only concern. I've got a day job. For me, whether they demonetize this or not, I don't give a shit. It basically means absolutely nothing to me in that regard. Saunas daily.
Yeah. So that's something that's another effective intervention that I think more people should be aware of, that raising your core temperature will disrupt replication for any infection, but especially but also for coronavirus. So provided that you're not dehydrating yourself, obviously, I would think it would be very, very effective to take a sauna once or twice a day if you have access.
Yeah, precisely. Look, it's good, those sort of things. If you're in colder climates as well, there's always the option of it's at the end of the day, it's affordability. I mean, I would say go and do a small stint of getting into a good quality sort of UV device, or getting a UV panel or whatever, if you're in a cold climate, rather than using supplements, which but most people, the affordability issue, whether they can afford it and stuff like that. And I go, well, for this short amount of period, for this period, we're in, just supplement. And I'm not pushing supplements at the moment. I'm not saying people in the Southern Hemisphere, you've just come out of summer. You've got high, if you've been out exposing yourself out in the sun, you should have high level status of vitamin D. You do not need to supplement at this stage, I get out in the sun continuously, but like Bart and, Pimmy's always out there, paddling around, so it's not an issue. But if you're basically in the Northern Hemisphere where you've just come out of winter, your status is going to be low. I'd be supplementing, it depends on the foods you eat as well. If you eat just a standard sort of diet of eggs and steak and stuff like that, you may get potentially, I'm not saying that you will, potentially anywhere from 500 to 1,000 IUs. If you include high quality dairy in that, you could potentially push it anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 IUs, potentially. I'm not, this is not gospel, guys. It depends on people's varied diets, all sorts of factors, in that regard, malabsorption, whatever, so there's a lot of issues out there. So, that's why, if you've got if you've got malabsorption issues, well, standard stuff isn't going to work. You may need either an injectable, or you may need to consider something like a liposomal form, so it depends on you, or going and getting yourself, a panel, a UV panel, or, sunbaking yourself in one of those devices, UV devices, so, yep, some of them have got, higher EMFs than others. I know, it's the reason why I don't recommend them as, your best alternative. Panels have got a much less of a problem in terms of EMF if they're good quality panels, but, nothing comes without some sort of cost, unfortunately. The world isn't as perfect or simple, or you can give a simple explanation or an alternative. I've been sunbaking half a day. So Luke's been sunbaking. Well, you're in Brazil, mate. Bloody hell. Summer over there. God, I'd be roasting out there like, I'd have the roast on the one side and me roasting on the other side. 5 days can result in, definitely sunbaking will result in, some sort of vitamin imbalance. Precisely. You need as much, retinol as you can get. I mean, you need to basically lay the fat down while you're sunbaking and gorge continuously. I mean, in a sort of, like the herbivores do, but in your case, a retinol sort of, and you'll be fine. Trust me. Would I lie?
I think you might be joking, Luke.
Yes, here's the point. Yes, I'm devastated. YouTube's going to hate me. What a decent bunch of, what a decent organization they are. I do apologize.
Yes, very, very transparent and fair and easy to talk to if you have any problems.
Precisely.
Feels very much like it's run by humans. And
exactly. It's not an AI you're talking to; it's a human.
Yeah,
and they are very respectful and very kind and very decent.
Customer satisfaction is their number one priority.
Mighty. I mean, the amount of thank yous that follow after a conversation with them from me personally. There's no expletives. I'm like a absolute
after all
gentleman.
of the conversations that you're definitely capable of having, because it's definitely possible to reach a human being at YouTube.
Yes. Oh God, I love StreamYard overshot again. Wonderful. Somebody's getting hungry. It's all that damn brie, I tell you. This one's actually got. Let me avoid choking because it's a family curse. My auntie died from choking on my mother's side, and I tend to choke very easily as well. So I better be careful. My mother.
You certainly don't need to choke live on stream.
That's it. You know what the vegans will say? It's him eating brie.
If you hadn't had animal foods, you would have been able to breathe right through that mouthful of food.
Precisely. If I was pushing down a celery piece.
Celery juice is good for your lungs, I hear.
Yeah, I do hear, but look, as again, show me the evidence.
I'm joking that if you breathe it in, it would.
It does wonders. Yeah. I don't know whether it clogs you and unclogs you or what it does, but
in terms of the claims about celery juice, it's the fountain of youth.
God, that's what I'm doing wrong. Damn, I need to get some celery juice.
Because it's such a pleasure to make.
I need to first hand my carnival card into Frankie.
Yeah.
Apologize to Bart, then have my juice, and then come back and sort of ask for forgiveness.
So I was thinking,
would you think that would work?
I need to raise this with Bart. If we're a meat militia, or then wouldn't it make some more sense to have a carnivore, a badge and gun, than a carnivore card?
Okay, so I'm gonna get bashed. Yeah, looking forward to it. Bring it on. That sounds nice. A leg of ram tonight. Lamb. I've actually got 3. I'm doing a roast next week anyway. I've been, shouldn't be too gluttonous with meat. Look, basically, if you're eating dairy-rich diet and all that sort of stuff, you're eating, things like brie, eggs, liver, organ meat, stuff like that. You'll get more than, and even from muscle meat, you'll get more than enough MK4 that you need. For most people that are healthy and all that, you don't need a supplement or anything like that. Now, in my case, I was quite deficient, and most people are. And so I used a calcium supplement, and also because it also helps in removing from fat tissue, a lot of calcium that's built up in your arteries and stuff like that. So you can accelerate it, but you have to be on a low inflammatory diet when you do that, because you don't want, unstable plaque and all that. Now, generally speaking, that's what I believe. But, since then I've looked at the science, and, the body doesn't, even though you may give it higher doses of MK4, it doesn't strip away the actual, the calcium material as fast as people think. It depends on, whether you're doing all the other stuff right in terms of nutrition, and it slowly starts clearing out all the debris at the same time. What the MK4 does, it helps to regulate that properly. So it's like many other things, cleaning out. But fasting also plays a role. So autophagy plays a role in that as well. It's not merely, let's use MK4 to clean our arteries. Yeah, it does help, but MK4 is another thing that is we're deficient in, which is the biggest problem. And so I usually say to people, when you come over to a carnivore diet, you may have dysregulated sort of, liver function because of, years of, not eating properly and, stuff like that through that FXR receptor. And so, people sometimes get, diarrhea and all sorts of issues. And MK4 plays a big role in, regulating and the biosynthesis of bile itself, plus a number of other roles that it plays in the role in repair mechanisms and all sorts of things, regulating MMPs as well, so these collagen degrading enzymes. So it synergistically, those three, retinol, D3 and MK4, synergistically work together. And that's why I say they should be part of the diet. A healthy diet, they should include those. And animal foods and the sun are what basically gives you that good sort of mix of nutrition. But if you're coming with underlying conditions, you're basically deficient in all that, yes, it's a good idea to, saturate your body with MK4. Now, I know I've heard Thomas DeLauer and other people will say that MK7 has higher resident time. Ignore that. That's nonsense. In about a third of people, you can't even convert MK7 to MK4. And most other people have very low conversion rates, which basically means you end up with a lot of resident stuff. It's like beta-carotene, poor conversion, goes to the skin, it becomes red. I have no idea what high concentrations of resident MK7 could potentially do and the imbalances they could cause. So I think it's very poor advice to be telling people to supplement high doses of MK7 just because it stays in your bloodstream for long. I don't think that's a good idea. I think the body should take something up. If it doesn't take something up or store it and it's sitting around in the bloodstream, what the fuck's it doing there? Not a good idea, guys, So it's like anything. I mean, this sort of reductionist bullshit, more is better, so yeah, pretty ignore that. If depending, I don't know what what your circumstances are. If you're in that early stage and you want to basically improve your general health, collagen, repair and all sorts of things like that, MK4 is probably a good supplement for a certain period of time. And I would say, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, and then basically, give it a miss after that. And good to see you honest. And that's true as well. So, I mean, on the corona stuff, I sort of mentioned that people shouldn't basically be taking things like, Panadol and things like, all these sort of things, Nurofen and, because basically fever needs to run its course because it helps, that's the normal, natural way of dealing.
It's funny that
you can say
coronavirus specifically is raising this issue around NSAIDs and any sort of anti-inflammatory drugs that way for a fever response, because I would think that blunting a fever artificially is probably the wrong answer in just about any situation apart from your temperature rising to a dangerous point.
It's more an issue for like younger kids where it seems like they can get much higher. They've still got a brain that's developing and stuff like that. And there you may want to use very low doses just to temper it down a bit. But it's not as problematic for, most people in the general public, they don't really get those extremely elevated fevers. So unless you've actually got a really high, extreme sort of fever, where you're getting headaches and you're really, starting to affect you, that's when you may want to use some of these sort of things to temper it down.
Right,
but
and you don't want to
overcorrect.
Stressed is
You don't want to overcorrect either.
Right. And the point where brain tissue tends to get stressed is somewhere around like 104 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. Right, that's quite a high fever.
Yeah, it's very high, and most people usually don't get to those levels.
No.
So I mean, we need to be, and you need that sort of, you need basically that fever to basically help you with dealing with this infection. It's just part of the process. That's how the body sort of deals with it. It's things that
you want to create a hostile environment to the foreign invader.
Exactly.
And your fever response is encoded in your genes for a reason.
Precisely. If it wasn't necessarily, it wouldn't be there. So I mean, that's the thing that that most people just don't understand. Vitamin C, look, that drives me up the wall. I've, as I said in one of my videos, I did say that if your family members are basically, high carbers along that, it probably would help them because they probably are deficient in vitamin C, especially. I mean, I've pointed that out shitloads of time, and oxalates are probably, give them a citric acid for the oxalate fallout in that regard. As I said, I don't recommend vitamin C because, if you're on a carnivore diet, you've got uric acid, not an issue. You're taking things in the food like, coenzyme Q10, you're upregulating glutathione, you're basically, getting all these other things, selenium from eggs and meat and organ meat. I mean, what else do you bloody need? There's a sort of level where, diminishing returns. So, yeah, vitamin C is not recommended on a carnivore diet or a low carb diet or whatever. It's basically, unless you want to basically build a whole lot of oxalate, go right ahead. But for people that may be in your family, and this was specific for those sort of cases, a low dose, not a high dose, a sort of a low dose vitamin C on an empty stomach when they're not eating, 2 hours before all that, may help lift their status slightly of vitamin C, because these carboholics are depleting it so rapidly, and it is required in immune functions and other things, and collagen and stuff like that. And so, those collagen degrading enzymes, to be regulated properly, there is, there's a bit of a need for that. Very minuscule, for us, we get enough in our meat and foods and stuff like that. But for this majority of the population, because we're the small segment, the majority of the population, on an empty stomach, a low dose would be probably very helpful for them in that regard. And a low dose isn't going to generate massive amount of oxalate, and it's probably going to be helpful to basically assist them. That's the only area I would basically be saying. The rest of us, nah, not even a non-go, in that regard. And some of those comments that I actually made were in regards to like supplementations, were more in regards to people that are in our families that, have a poor diet. We're going to get pretty much heaps of, creatine and carnitine and, all these, if you're eating an ancestral diet, you should be getting these things. If you're not getting them, what the fuck are you doing? So fasting for too long, that's not a good thing in this sort of environment. It's too stressful for the body, So, focus on keeping your nutrition healthy, and just keep it to low levels at this stage, if you've done a reset like I did, fine, and you're fine. Yeah, neither would I. There's too much crap out there as well, in that regard. Yes. Yeah, it will be a lot poorer. That's true.
Depends what you value, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the sort of things. I don't believe any proof exists that there's a difference between synthetic and natural. Look, the natural, it's actually the actual outer. The ascorbic acid is that actual outer layer of the actual complex of the. There are other parts to the vitamin C complex. So, but in terms of its activity, there's not much difference. And the other parts, we're not sure exactly. Nobody's proven mechanistically what they do. So there's big question marks. So, it's like a lot of things. There's a number of, things, even in the mitochondria that we still don't understand. There's question marks on them. So it's just one of those things, like anything. But in terms of activity of ascorbic acid, as in antioxidant stuff like that, yeah, same. It does very much. It's the molecule's not that much different, and the molecule coming from animals that can convert it from glucose is not much different. So, yep, there's some truth in what you're saying in sort of the structure. But in terms of, its full form, there is a difference in that regard, so, but its role within the body, probably less, but, I'd still get it from animal sources, focus on that. I work 2 jobs. Oh, shit, just lost, yeah, but I lost one. Yeah, look, I can understand. Would have lost all my savings. Yeah, look, a lot of people are in the same boat, unfortunately, So, it's yeah. So that's a comment. I don't know what your conditions were. Yep, it's another comment. Look.
Oh, he had asked about. He said he has cold sores or HSV1. It was way up there though. It was much earlier.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find it for you.
Yeah, but I don't know what diet he's on. So if he's on, an inflammatory diet or he's eating certain carbs and stuff like that. I mean, I get a whole lot of different people, because, I do a carnivore diet myself, but I don't promote this channel as a carnivore channel.
Right.
I sort of promote it as, people can come along from any walk of life and get some knowledge and some information about different things, how the body works and how things work in the body and stuff like that, and other factors within your lifestyle and environment that can have an effect. And that's sort of my focus, and dispelling some of the bullshit that's out there. So that's the focus of my channel. So, I don't know what the person's, they would have to, I'd have to know their sort of underlying sort of history and stuff like that. And as I usually say, if it's a very complicated history and all that, consider, because I've got a day job, I've got no time. And while I've contacted a few people, and I have basically spoken to a few people or send messages back to some people so I've, in that regard, I can't basically do, certain private consultancies for everyone. It's people that are really, at their death door, sort of, or that very difficult spot, and their finances are in the toilet, that I've sort of reached out and helped, but I can't do it for everyone, guys. I've got a day job. I'm just, up to my eyeballs in things. And so, that would be, as Bart would say, consultancy. And I would say, go and see Bart K and actually consult with him. and provide a good detailed background and what your test results showed.
His question was pretty specific. Can I read it for you just so it's there?
Yeah, go right ahead.
At least.
Yep.
So he says, I've had HSV1 cold sores most of my life. Doctors told me to avoid high arginine foods, nuts, chocolate, etc., and eat lysine richer instead. Any implications with a carnivore diet regarding this?
Okay. Well, glycine is, you'll find in connective tissue, gelatin, certain crustaceans and stuff like that. So if you're eating that sort of food, that should help in that regard. In terms of, usually from my history, because I won't mention names of people, but that have had cold sores in that regard, they were on a sort of a standard diet in a sense. And when you are on a highly nutrient animal diet, they should recede in that regard. But at the same time, in terms of cold sores, remember, you still need vitamin D is important, and using the suppressive effect of calcium to deal with them as well. So that's another factor. So basically, what's your calcium levels? And I'm not saying about fucking supplements now. I'm talking about, are you consuming milk? Are you consuming bone broth? Are you consuming, these sort of foods, ancestral foods, to help with that? So, that's, I always say, show me one population which was basically a steak-only diet population, multi-generational, steak-only. There's not one. But I can show you plenty of populations that basically ate a certain level of nose to tail and a mix sources through the seasonal period. So they would eat more fish, or they would eat crustaceans, or they would eat different things in different parts of the environment as they moved around in the environment, and different animal sources and all that. So they've got a very varied and mixed sort of source of nutrition. And so that would be basically far healthier, some fish, some crustaceans, some animal food, some of the parts and all that. We're not talking about continuously eating liver. We're talking about occasionally eating liver, occasionally eating crustaceans, occasionally eating these sort of things, because when you're on a carnivore diet, you're taking in, remember, your connective tissue and all that is made of fat, cholesterol. Well, cholesterol is a sort of waxy lipid, sort of fatty material, but, in a sense, fat, cholesterol, and protein, and obviously, some other things, yes, you've got stored glycogen, and you've got sugar molecules that basically play a role, there. So you've got a bit of sugar as well, and that's really what your body's made of. Well, when you're eating those ancestral foods, the amount of transcription factors and the amount of cofactors and vitamins and minerals that you require in order to basically break down that material and absorb it and incorporate it into your body is less. Also, when you're burning fat, you're producing far less reactive oxygen species. You need less antioxidants. That'll only upregulate the master antioxidant glutathione, and you're eating, high quality, far superior to vitamin E or vitamin C. And vitamin E high doses, and vitamin E and vitamin C are there incorporated to stabilize certain things or to deal with certain things, the deleterious effects. Because otherwise the body would have rejected them a long time ago. It would have had its own biosynthesis. But when you're eating, you go and grab a seasonal fruit off the tree and you eat it there and then, it's got quite a bit of vitamin C in it. But if you eat that and let's say you put it on the bench for half an hour, you've already lost about 40 to 50% of the vitamin C. It's dying and decaying in that plant that you've just cut. Now you go and store it away in a fridge, then put it on the supermarket shelf and then pick it up, 2 days later. Do you think there's going to be a lot of vitamin C in there? And then people wonder why people on vegetarian diets have high levels of scurvy, low grade, but still, problems with bleeding gums and all sorts of issues. Where in the animal food, that vitamin C is much better stabilized and held together. And even the actual PUFA component in animal food is stabilized with vitamin E, but it's stabilized in such a way where, it doesn't degrade like in a plant. So when you cut a plant, you start getting, degrading effects of these things. And so, PUFA becomes more oxidized as a consequence. So plants, no good, in that regard, in the way they work. And so I know it's I'm going on a tangent again, as I usually bloody do. But it's really important that we get the proper nutrition in. And then if things are not working exactly, then it's a matter of tweaking, because you may have certain genetics. I mean, like myself, I need more choline than other people. So there are genetic reasons that may mean you need more of this. Come from the British Isles, you need more retinol in your diet because you basically have downregulated, beta-carotene conversion. And there are like carotenoids in even animal foods, so you're not going to convert those very effectively. So you may need more retinol. So these things are important to understand, these sort of differences. So these subtle differences are going to basically be where you are going to play around with your diet and all that. And I always say to people, incorporate other things and see how things play out. Now, I wouldn't put dairy in the early stages. If you're coming off a SAD diet, vegan diet or whatever, you're going to have leaky gut. You're going to have gut permeability. You're going to have issues. So I wouldn't put eggs or dairy in there, or some seafoods like crustaceans and all that. You're possibly going to create issues for yourself. So I would go for the meat sort of only as a sort of a base and as a transition. And I would basically look at improving the acidity of my stomach. I've been saying it for ages. Disease does not start in the gut. Disease starts in the stomach. You get the acidity right, everything flows from that, guys. Acidity is properly, everything flows. You absorb better. You start, incorporating those foods that you need. You break down the proteins into amino acids, the fats into fatty acids. And, and the other thing is I always recommend in those early days when you're using, ways of acidifying your stomach, also to incorporate proteolytic enzymes, because you may not have sufficient, bile, so you may need bile salts. Your pancreas may not be working very well. And so you need to assist that whole system, get it going and working. And then basically, over time, that will heal. It takes time, It took me decades to basically ruin my health. It took me about a decade to basically heal. And I'm still on that path, not 100% where I want to be like I was in my 20s. Maybe I won't get there. Maybe I'm deluding myself at 54, but that's a different story. I like to delude myself sometimes that I will get back to that youthful feeling.
Hope is important.
Exactly. Hope is important, as Jared will say.
Just so that it's there on the stream for anybody rewatching, what are the most effective ways to acidify your gut or your stomach, in your opinion? That I know it's proteolytic enzymes, potentially bile salts.
No. Proteolytic enzymes, the sort of stuff that breaks down stuff and all that, and also plays an important role. Like even proteolytic enzymes, you can also use to break down, because these enzymes can be used to go in there. There's a number of types. I'll put a link down anyway, that also help to basically, like scar tissue, they can remove and clear out and stuff like that. So they play a big role throughout the whole body. Plus, they play a role in digestion. So there are different types of enzymes that we can incorporate for different purposes. So proteolytic enzymes is like a general sort of very wide thing, or digestive enzymes is a subcategory of that as well. So, you would use basically like something like HCl to basically sort of acidify in those early days. Bile, you'd get bile, salts as well to basically help with that as well. And then you would basically throw in one of those digestive enzymes after the meal. And so that would help with all that digestion and all that. And over time, you can move away from that stuff. As I said, because of the malabsorption through the colon of basically bile, you may require, high doses of MK4 to fix that. You may have liver issues where you may require, certain things like milk thistle, to, help with some of that fibrosis affecting the liver. So there's a number of things, in that regard. I'm going to do a video on that, on this sort of protocol. But, until then, go and see Bart. He knows all this shit, and get him to do a consultancy and give you a sort of a step-by-step, way to do it. So, these are the sort of important things you got to do. But proteolytic enzymes in general, there are other subcategories of proteolytic enzymes, and they can help clear out a lot of that debris and all that. Because remember, when you're coming off these sort of diets, your body, has, you've degraded your capacity to heal. You don't have the capacity. Your mitochondria are fucked because of too much deuterium and damaging. You're in an environment that's basically bleeding away your NAD plus. In that regard, and sort of you that whole redox. That is sort of being backed up. It's sort of not performing as well, because most people, are basically, engaging the Randall cycle and, really stuffing up their mitochondrial efficiency and function. There's all these sort of things that are coming off that sort of situation. So, if your ability to produce energy is impeded, well, you need the energy to produce all these, things, these enzymes, these little nanomotors, Luke, to go out there and do all that work, So these are the sort of problems. So it's all transitional. There are stages that people go through that they have to do certain things to recover their health. And when they go really quickly, and even Bart, I agree with Bart on that, going quickly is not a good idea. You get yourself into more trouble. Transition, heal, correct things, and do it over stage. I mean, you've gone through Bart, and you probably know far more than me, how good he is at, trying to coax you along and help you, and sort of you can use him as a sounding board to basically, ask things, because everybody's going to have different ailments or different issues, the underlying issues that they're resolving. Luke, Jared, nope. I was just going to follow on from what I said about, because you've talked with Bart as well. Anyway, don't worry. Yep.
I haven't consulted about extremely specific health things with him, but he has definitely helped me that way. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I know. Isn't it funny? What a contradiction in terms. Don't hoard. One's paper is more important than another's people's paper. I'm talking about the toilet paper analogy.
I should have a stack of toilet papers behind me to show my incredible wealth at this time.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. The problem is a lot of these are some of these are case studies, and they have, provided mechanism or explanation, in that regard. Look, at the end of the day, if you've got a lot of oxidation out there, a lot of these sort of things will sweep it up. But the downside is when you're using something like, you could use glutathione, you can use allopoic acid. There are other things. You don't have to use vitamin C. The difference is the other ones basically don't create the fallout of oxalate. So, I would rather use some of the others to sweep up the mess that somebody created, that I created. Usually it's us. We create to ourselves because ill-informed. But, that's the sort of the best approach. If you think about it, the best If you want to, let's say you want to high dose, and this is a biohack, and you want to basically throw in a couple of antioxidants, which I don't recommend, because can create other dysregulation, but we're just talking theoretical here. And you were to throw in something like alpha-lipoic acid, which you find in liver, in these sort of animal foods, organ meats. What it is like a super electron donor. So it'll actually recycle vitamin E, vitamin C, glutathione, coenzyme Q10. It'll actually recycle all these. It's like a super sort of electron donor to give them back. Because what is something which is reacting? It's basically missing an electron. So if you give that electron and you've got a super electron donor, you can really, recycle a lot of these sort of things and get them out doing more cleanup work. Mm-hmm. But, you need some sort of reactive oxygen species out there. You need some for certain signaling and other important health promoting effects and hermetic effects as well. So you don't want to suppress that. It's like, the worst thing you can do is go and exercise and then basically give yourself vitamin C. That's just defeating the whole purpose of the hermetic stress. So it depends on your circumstance, on, what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve and all that. I would say if you're on an animal-based diet that has these antioxidants, which are better regulated by the body, glutathione is demand driven, not supply driven, but demand driven. Alpha-lipoic acid, all these sort of things that you get from food, the body will utilize, these sort of things in an antioxidant way or for basically healing purposes. Zinc, selenium, all these things in a controlled way. The problem with vitamin C, in high doses, it comes in an uncontrollable way. And once it donates away that electron, it becomes reactive. So it becomes a pro-oxidant. So that is why the body has to basically clear it out as an oxalate. Mm-hmm. So, this is the thing. So high doses isn't a good idea. Short, a lot of these probably studies, short period of time, probably not going to damage. But if you were to do this continuously every day, high doses, I don't think your kidneys are going to like you very, very much. And I think you'll be pushing out some fucking really big stones. So, and tearing your kidneys apart. Do you want to be damaging your kidneys? Oh,
not
bloody hell. No, bloody hell not.
So that electron donor effect would be a similar reason why electrical grounding would be beneficial, correct?
Exactly. So, the thing is, grounding is healing. Now I've lost my bloody... This is what drives me mad with... Yeah, you continue while I'm actually looking.
I was just going to say, Luke just put a good link of a new Photoshop image up.
Okay, I can't... I'll have to...
I clicked it while you were talking. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing and interrupting you.
Oh, I've got to put this on. Mate, you've outdone yourself. Perfect. Got the stuff. Oh, that's fucking funny. That is really, really good.
And everything. Yeah.
You become famous, mate. Or infamous.
I may have to change that to my profile picture on YouTube.
You will. You'll have to download it. Bloody hell. That is good, mate. That is good.
Very good.
He's outdone himself again. Let me go back to the live stream. Yep. Okay. That's perfect. I'll have to go to the bottom just to put up the the remarks.
It makes me sad that I can't get raw milk now. Right now, anyway, until this all blows over. I hear they closed pubs in the UK, so people can't even go down to the Winchester and have a nice cold pint until this all blows over.
Are you looking?
Am I looking at what?
Somebody's got raw milk, apparently.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see what's in your cup. I have raw milk right now. I just don't have access to it, so my supply is very limited. Gets more and more precious every glass that I drink. So
basically, you're using a firearm to protect yourself now from your neighbours and your family. No, I think he's forking it out.
Very good.
Yes, Luke is always, he's absolute genius, you know.
Shell says I have to ration my stash of milk. Yeah, that's right.
You'll have to.
Yeah, I'm gonna weigh it all out and figure out how much I can have each day, how far it'll stretch. No, no, I'm just drinking it the way I like to drink it, and when it's gone, it is.
Oops. So what was that? Painless on Carnival?
Now, she was saying that she has mild coronavirus symptoms.
Okay.
She was saying that she has like chest cartilage inflammation.
Okay. Yep. Oh, look, usually, you'll get sore all over the body with like with the flu, very similar sort of symptoms. So at the end of the day, it's just something you have to just push through. If you're eating good nutrition, you got your vitamin D, you're gargling. Don't forget your gargling. You need to gargle. At this stage, if you're in the early stage, you can use basically like iodinized salt water or iodine, to gargle, just to, and also to flush your nose with iodine and all that, or salt water, which is a good strategy. And then as you move into the sort of the latter part, basically even water gargling does the trick, that other Japanese study that I showed. So it's in the early stages where the iodine helps. In the later stage, it's more the gargling effect of just dislodging things and keeping them out, better out than in, so to speak. Cleaning out your pathways, in your mucosal sort of area. Try to, if you're not contagious, focus on, learning to breathe, getting back. Took me a while to learn to breathe through my nose, because your nose is protective, your mouth isn't, and I don't have years ago sort of it's just the health issues and all that I had, trying to think now. I'm brain dead at the moment. But in the back thing, that little hanging thing in your.
Oh, I forget I know what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah. God Almighty. Yeah, I had that removed as a youngster, and that plays an important role to keep down the sort of pathogens and stuff like that come through. Unfortunately, doctors back then, they just like anything, let's cut it out. It's inflamed, So that was the logic back then, unfortunately. So I am a bit more vulnerable in that case. So try learning to breathe through your nose. Focus on that, because then at least when you get home, you can wash your hands and then wash out your nose. So if there's any stuff that's sort of before it moves, and but you don't. There was a lot of people that are talking about, flushing with water and all that. Nah, don't do that. That just pushes things further in. not a good idea. I've heard people saying that. That's just stupid, ignorant. You don't want to dislodge that. What you want to do is you want to basically use like a nasal spray with iodine or salt type water, sort of a thing. And so you spray it in, if you get one of those sprays, that you press down and it goes in to your nose, and sort of from top push it outwards, sort of drain it outwards. You don't want to be putting stuff in there. I've noticed somebody's talking about there's some sort of device somebody mentioned on the web where you put it in your nose and it sort of flushes the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a bad idea, because what it does is it's dislodging that structure, the mucosal structure that's actually trying to keep things out. And you're breaking that and potentially pushing, the virus inwards or other things, pathogens inwards. So you want to be basically spray it to kill, a large part of it, and then you want to sort of push it out, naturally, like you would like sneeze or whatever. What do you think sneezing is all about? Pushing things out, not in. So, don't listen to there's a lot of products out there that have been promoted and pushed and stupid ideas that basically are putting you at greater risk. So, so keep that in mind. Yep.
So what you would buy like a homemade nasal spray dispenser?
Yeah, sort of thing. That's right. One of those dispensers, and basically, dilute, like iodine drops to the percentage that the recommended information is on the device, and put it into the actual. You could do salt water type thing as well. That's another option. It's just cheaper option. Does the same similar thing. Not as effective as iodine, but not as bad. And you just spray the nose. So you're sort of wetting, so your nose inside, that sort of cavity inside. You basically have your nasal, duct. Now in there, you'll have, those sort of mucus that would actually build up to keep things out. And what you want to do is you want to spray, so the stuff that's on the outer side of the mucus and in the front, the initial front part of the nose, you want to basically kill the majority of whatever's in there, and then you want from the top downwards pushing to get stuff out. And just wash your hands, and obviously do your sort of hygiene thing with your hands after that. You've done that, and sort of clear out that debris, or blow it out, and stuff
so
like that.
I'm assuming you don't want to inhale it like nasal spray the way you would. You want to just
no. You don't want to sort of inhale it. No, we're not talking about inhaling. We're just talking about spraying. Just I wouldn't go very close, because some of those can be a bit powerful, a bit further away. So you're just getting it in that lower part to clean that sort of stuff, and then sort of clean it out, get it out. That's what you don't want, things to sort of get into your body. That's the whole purpose of that mucosal sort of barriers, is to basically keep things out. That's the whole purpose. That's another reason why you want to be breathing through your nose. So it's the sort of stuff, if that makes sense. Yes, nothing like a sauna.
I really need a home sauna. I'm going to get one in the near future.
Thank you. What about Negro Kitty? Key, where are we? Do you think that these fruits, powders like camu, they, or the cherries and stuff like that, marked as, look, not needed, not required in that regard? And I mean, all these things provide like camu and stuff like that. They provide like a hermetic effect. I can tell you, mate, we get plenty of hormesis, EMFs, toxins in our environment, pollutants, and all sort of things. We don't live in a pristine environment anymore, and all these sort of things are extra hermetic effects. Exercise, you get enough hormesis. You don't need to add to the misery of
heat, cold, breath holding.
Yeah, precisely. Breath holding. Yep, exactly. So there's a lot of things you can do. Much cheaper. Doesn't cost anything. That's why it's not promoted, because it doesn't cost anything. And there's no money to be made. It's the old story, So let's try and get a few more questions. They say freeze-dried and then powdered. Yeah, who cares what they say? They say a lot of things. Sometimes they lie, sometimes, but it's irrelevant in that regard. Yep, Shelley. That's true. A lot of the drying can actually deplete the micronutrients.
Yep.
So that's spot on.
Depends how it's dried, the degree to which it's going to
That's
be
true.
Of course.
Yep.
So like jerky, example, homemade jerky, if you make it at a lower temperature, it's going to preserve a little bit more of the water-soluble vitamins especially. But yeah, generally speaking, drying food will certainly degrade it to some amount.
Yeah, and that's spot on.
Freeze drying, I would imagine, would degrade it worse.
Yep. Yeah, it depends. Like fish, for instance, you freeze, dry them, not a problem.
Right.
It's more the actual losing of the fluids.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can basically, so the more fluids you remove from a food, the more nutrients you remove. So you end up more like in fruit, or in vegetables, you end up more with a pulp. In meat, you end up with dried, protein, sort of, and fats, sort of. So yeah, that regard. So that's a comment. Let's take a look. So, why do people prefer toilet paper over butt wipes? Okay, so somebody's a baby in this crowd. So you prefer butt wipes? Each to their own. Each to their own. Yep. Do you want to comment, Jared? Do you prefer butt wipes or toilet paper?
I guess I always call it toilet paper. Personally, I don't know. It depends
now you're being evasive.
Depends on the context. Toilet paper can be used for multiple things, whereas butt wipes sounds very specific. Butt wipe is nice and tautological, at least.
That's true. Yes, correct in its usage. Yes, but in terms of terminology, but yes. Let's find some questions. Somebody's lucky. I have an Italian toilet paper factory. So we know where Shelley usually ends up going.
Italian toilet paper, is that like
outside,
higher quality toilet paper?
We hope so.
The way that like Italian leather is supposed to be higher quality leather?
We don't know. I make no comments to my Italian friends. Now, we need to go past all this. So in terms of the fruit, yep, look, you're in the tropics, the fruit, yep, look, when you're in the tropics, when you try fruit, it's definitely different. When you cut it off it's just recently come off the tree, it's like night and day, the taste levels. Plus, you're out there in solar radiation depleting any deuterium coming from the fruit, because fruit is the worst culprits in terms of carbohydrates, in terms of deuterium, and damaging your mitochondria. Nanomotors.
Luke was just asking if you can freeze raw milk.
No, not a good idea.
Yeah, I said it freezes better than pasteurized milk, but it still affects it.
It does. It does. You lose nutrition, but also it seems to actually affect it has some deleterious effects on both the fats and the proteins. Where meat, if you freeze it, it doesn't seem to do that, but it seems to do it to some degree, and the taste changes. It seems like it degrades, especially the lipids seem to be degraded far more than it's it's not a good idea. I don't think it's meant to basically be frozen in that. Chilled, yes, but
I have a couple gallons frozen right now that I do intend to drink after I run out, but because I wasn't going to go through it fast enough otherwise.
Yep. Shut down. Damn. God, shit will really hit the fan now that it's shut down. I had to throw that in. Couldn't help myself. Guys, any more new questions? No more coronavirus or shit ones, or related to sanitary items or wiping one's rear end?
I think I'm going to pack it in about 20 minutes.
Not a problem. I'll be demonetized doubly by YouTube. I'll get one of those really interesting, colourful and friendly conversations. Raw meat eaters can't return to cooked meat because of acid reflux. Have you heard about this? Nope. Really? They don't? Have you, Jared? Heard about raw?
I've never heard of that, but I would guess that it might have something to do with digestive enzymes, and that you might be able to regain the ability to eat it if you continue to do so.
Yeah, I would say probably the only logical thing that I can think of is that raw meat has has enzymes in it, and some digestive enzymes. Maybe what happens is it's a transition period, so you get a downregulation of endogenous production through, like your pancreas providing those enzymes, those proteolytic type of enzymes to break down that food and absorb it. But I'm thinking that gets downregulated since you're giving it, and then so when you go back to cooked stuff, there's a time delay before you can build up the enzymes to be able to deal with it. It's a bit like when you go on a carnivore diet and then you throw in a couple of vegetables and you go, oh shit, that didn't really agree with me, because you don't have the same gut microbiome or some of the digestive enzymes that are required, down-regulated, that are required to break down, the sort of carbohydrate that you're putting into your body. So that's probably the reason why. So you may need, if you want to go back to cooked food, you may need to basically incorporate some digestive enzymes until you transition and sort of reduce them. So, and slowly, and notice how your body responds, whether it's starting to produce, because you don't want to, you want to try a certain, try one tablet. If that seems to work, fine. If it doesn't, try a second tablet. If that seems to work, then stick to that for a while, like a week or whatever. Then the next week, sort of reduce it to 1.5, then to 1, then, and sort of scale yourself until you force the body to start increasing its own endogenous production and still gets back to that normal rate. That's the only thing I can think of that it makes logical sense. Nothing else would. Do you want to add anything to while I enjoy my milk?
No, yeah, it's just guessing. Like I said, it's I haven't heard of that issue, but I would guess, like you said, that it's a transition issue of some kind. That
I think so.
I really can't see that being a permanent loss of the ability to digest cooked food.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I pretty much think. Sorry, guys, I should have muted myself. I pretty much think that that is a transition. Like, you know, when you're moving from one diet to another, you know, you need enzymes to be, you know, transcripted specifically to hydrolyze those new nutrients that you're putting into your body. It's the same thing, you know, like anything. They're all transitions that take time and adjustments. So I don't believe it's a permanent thing. I think it's more to do with that. And potentially also the viral load you may need to consider as well, because, you know, something like an acidifier as well in there as well, because if you're getting acid reflux and stuff like that, you may be adding additional viral load. The whole reason for your stomach acid is to deal with that. Look, even though I do consume some raw animal foods like beef tartare and stuff like that, most of my food is cooked. It's sort of cooked rare, you know, not overcooked, but at the same time, you know, a proportion of it is cooked. So a third of it is cooked, you know, 2/3 are sort of semi-raw, you know, in that regard, to hold in more nutrients, you know, micronutrients, so you don't lose a lot of those. But so my body is designed to basically deal with both a certain level of raw and a certain level of cooked. So it doesn't have a problem. And because a lot of the dairy products are also raw in nature, you know, well, occasionally, you know, I'll warm some milk up, but that's not a big issue. But in general terms, that's the sort of normal. It's really when, look, I don't know how long it takes for that transition, because I've never heard of it, to be honest, because, you know, I know there are some practitioners of raw meat diets and all that, but yeah, probably another reason why I wouldn't recommend it. I missed that one.
That's the raw meat spirit that I'm accustomed to from talking to raw dieters. What are you doing trying out cooked food anyway? I thought you're supposed to just stick with raw meat until you die. It's far superior, isn't it?
Look, humans 1.5 million, or hominins 1.5 million years ago, started cooking to extract more nutrients. That's why.
Yeah,
because
and that doesn't mean cooking all the way through and making all well done, but having a seared surface on it for sure.
It's sort of that sweet spot. You don't want to overcook it. You don't want to not cook it at all. It's that sweet spot that basically provides the benefit of getting enough, micronutrients, calories, and stuff in, for good function. And our bodies can cope with that because they've got specific enzymes to deal with that we've basically evolved over 1.5 million years. So it's a non-issue cooking animal products. Are there benefits of raw meat? Yes, there are.
Oh yeah, I don't mean to belittle anybody that's experienced benefit from a specific issue by switching to a raw diet. I just hope I don't have to, because I like the taste of cooked meat.
Yeah, me too.
My steak blue rare. It's basically rare, raw in the middle.
Yep. Look, milk is a bit of a different thing altogether. The biggest problem is with pasteurized milk. You're only getting the macros. Most of the nutrition and micros have been, most of the like enzymes, forget it. There's none there. There's a lot of things, lactoferrin, that's gone. There's a lot of things that are nutrition that is lost. All you're left is with a small amount of fat soluble vitamins and a lesser amount of B vitamins, no vitamin C whatsoever. So no, it's definitely not an ideal thing to do. And people do notice. It depends. It depends on, there are differences in that regard, but it depends on what, I can consume, pasteurized milk and I don't get any acid reflux. Like at work, I use it all the time because that's all I've got. So, it depends on where your stomach is. If your stomach is not producing enough acid and all that, yes, where what happens if your stomach, your underlying issue is your stomach, obviously raw actually reduces that requirement to some extent. That's what I, from my knowledge, that's the sort of requirement. But the thing is, that's not very healthy, because that's just means that you're introducing more potential pathogens into your body that could be harmful. The ones that you get now, and especially in the food supply now, the food supply isn't as pristine. Goes through a lot of different hands, many carb eaters as well, hands that are very unhealthy. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, my answer would just be, if he hasn't tried raw milk and acid reflux is the only issue with pasteurized milk, it'd be worth trying.
Yep, exactly. Precisely. There's nothing wrong with giving it a try and see what happens. On my European stream, I mentioned a work out fasted when cortisol is high. Can you clarify this? Okay. You basically will lose one thing. You get more like sparing of glucose and protein as well. But the other thing is, you don't want to be eating at the that was in regards to in the early part of the day. So if you're exercising in the morning, do it in a fasted way, and it had to do because cortisol's high. I don't recommend people eat, especially carbohydrates. And somebody on, and I won't mention names, as you know, on a recent stream this morning actually said that they consume carbohydrates in the morning. I don't recommend that because it's not ancestral. And we only have to look at our ancestors. They had no fridges, no carbs, no whatever. And and I've mentioned about Greeks and many peasants and many agriculturalists. They used to go out to the farm. They used to work until about early in the mid-morning, 10:30, 11, and they would come back and they would have their first meal. That's when they broke their fast. That's when your cortisol is at the lowest. You don't want to be spiking insulin at the same time as your cortisol is high. And that's not a good idea at all. So, and that's why I sort of mentioned in regards to morning exercise. Afternoon exercise is different. Afternoon exercise, if you're lifting weights and stuff like that, I even recommend, I did say whey you can use if you want to, but I'm not talking about supplements here. I'm talking about you can get like whey fluids as fluids and use that. That's what I'm talking about. I did not say at all. I just said whey, but not supplements. I didn't say supplements.
Actual whey from
exactly actual whey, and I'll clarify that just to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. And and so you can use that because it actually has a more anabolic effect. It has double like if you were to have pure glucose and pure whey will give you double the anabolic effect or insulin effect that spike. The difference is whey will come down much faster because it absorbs so rapidly, where glucose will basically sort of taper off much longer. So, which isn't a good thing. So you want that quick spike and into the muscle. But when you're actually lifting weights and all that, that's good because you're really enhancing muscle protein synthesis. But after that, you want a low diffusion type protein because you don't want catabolism, because you've got breakdown of tissue, and that breakdown of tissue basically then creates some level where you need nutrients like an amino sort of a certain amino pool that remains more resident within the bloodstream. And I've said to people in the past, which is, when they've actually pushed me and said, what sort of supplement? I said, if you're bloody hell bent on having a supplement, then take casein because it has longer resident time. in terms of absorbing, keeping a bigger pool and taking it in over time to basically, as your body naturally, when you relax after an exercise or, to failure, you'll basically then be able to build that tissue up and myonuclei as well in the actual, muscle fibers. Now, as far as, what I would recommend is basically the old traditional, what the bodybuilders did, steak and eggs and dairy. That's what I would. I've actually sent somebody, the old bodybuilders, which Arnold Schwarzenegger and many others of the golden era, actually what they used. And I've actually sent it to Frankie as well. So to help him in his fight with the vegetards, even though he pisses me off about other things. As a carnivore, I still want to support him, but, that doesn't mean I won't criticize him. He still doesn't talk to me. He doesn't reply, even though I give him information. I wonder whether I should continue, but anyway, that's another story. I must be a nice guy.
Yeah, if you haven't watched...
Or an idiot.
If you haven't watched the stream that Tristan did recently on Primal Edge Health about
No, I haven't.
It was labeled as a Frank Tofano debate, but Tofano didn't show. And instead, Tristan just sort of went over the history of interaction he has with this guy and the reasons why he feels the need to call him out rather than bite his tongue any longer. And there's some pretty damning stuff in there.
Really? Okay, maybe I should check it.
Yeah.
Look, I don't really get heavily into the politics. I've got a day job. Do you think I give a flying fuck about what the other carnivores are saying or what they're doing and all that? No, zero. The only thing that I'm concerned about, precisely, the only thing I'm concerned is my followers. Can I help them when I'm on here? That's all I'm concerned about, not the politics and all that. And I like people like Bart because he keeps it clean. He's focused on the science and, ridiculing these people. Like I sort of call out the bullshit as well. And so I have gravitated towards a person that is more of a kindred spirit in many regards, that regard. And we have a similar approach. We're both empiricists. We basically believe in, non-speculative, we don't believe in positivism, in sort of those sort of scientists who believe in metaphysics and positivism and all this and basically sort of rationalism, because not positivism, sorry, rationalism. Positivism is fine, is a good scientific approach. So is materialism, and so is basically, empiricism. What we're against is metaphysics, this idle speculation and crap, and basically rationalists who basically think that through mathematics and modeling and whatever else, I can somehow understand the world around me, not observing it, but I'm a godlike figure that can rationally understand the universe. And I will tell you from my pulpit what to believe. That's the sort of people we dislike vehemently. And that's why we're sort of a kindred spirits and we sort of gravitated to each other. Where I haven't found that with other YouTubers. And, I don't really give a fuck if they don't invite me. If they do, I've had a few people that have, Gary's approached me from UK, and when he gets himself set up and all that, I'll go on to his. And if, Tristan or anyone else asks me, I'll go, not a problem. I mean, Tristan and me are both Greek Orthodox, so we've got the same faith, and I know it sounds funny because he sort of rejects evolution. I don't. And as I say, it's my traditional faith, because he's come in as an outsider to the faith, but he hasn't come through the tradition that I've come through the Greek tradition, the Greek society and all that. And so we have this sort of tradition where, this sort of separation of church and state. To what is Caesar's is Caesar's, to what is God's is God's. We have this quite clear. This is another reason why we criticize the Catholics, for this reason, that they interfere in politics. There has to be that. Our belief is that the whole purpose of faith is to basically move you away from darkness closer to light, that we're on a gradient of good and bad as humans because we're exposed to this sort of environment, and we sort of move on that gradient. And the whole purpose of a priest, the whole purpose is like a mentor trying to basically coax you closer to the light to become more God-like in behavior, You're not going to have, a lot of people get confused when we say apotheosis, which is more God-like. It doesn't mean we become God, but we become more like God in behavior. That means better people that give a shit about other people and stuff like that. That's the more important. If you hear some of the Greek Orthodox priests, the way they swear to their kids and stuff like that, trust me, that is not a big sin as most people think. It's basically whether you're on that gradient of moving closer to light or darkness, which is the thing, whether you're really being, getting into that sort of evil, negative, hateful sort of, thinking and mindset, or whether you're moving closer to light and becoming a more, constructive person in society and amongst people in your life and trying to help people rather than tear people down. So that's the sort of thing that that my faith sort of, and I have no qualms, because originally the faith actually said, and a lot of people ignore these things, the concept of a soul by one of the Catholic, sort of, because we're all both Greek Orthodox and the Catholics, we're all basically Catholic and Apostolic. The difference is one is Orthodox and one is Roman Catholic when the separation happened, and then some other doctrinal sort of changes happened. My sort of personal belief is that that initially their priests used to marry and they stopped doing that. And I think they got too degenerate in terms of, but that's my personal opinion. I don't want to disrespect anyone. And that shows of all the scandals that have come out. I think priests should marry, have kids. My cousin, he still hasn't found a wife. He's trying to find a wife because he can't become a priest until he's married, ordained. So you marry Christ first, and then you can marry another person. So, you become a family man, you're part of the community, you're a regular sort of person, so you understand other people's, other struggles and stuff like that. And they're, trying to bring up kids and whatever else. It's a normal sort of way of living. But that's a side issue. We won't get into that now. But, in terms, because people ask me sometimes and all that, but my sort of, my approach, and that's why with Tristan, I can sort of, at that level, I can, communicate. But my sort of attitude is that, Christ resurrected, Lazarus, and basically that whole thing coming back from the soil, in form, in that regard, that basically the soul concept came later on in the religion. It was never in the early church. There was an incorporation later. So, my sort of belief, my sort of view is that, that whatever you want to call God, what lies beyond space-time, that entity, that created this material universe, works by certain laws and all that. That's why it doesn't fall apart. I mean, if you believe in that, in a deity, it wouldn't have created some simplistic, nonsensical world, but something that works with really, simple but very complicated type structures that it can evolve. Now that's great intelligence, far beyond, anything that this universe could create internally. So that's why I can reconcile the two, if you understand what I mean. But I've gravitated between agnosticism and and atheism and back and forward. I've had my own struggles about these sort of things as a youngster. I mean, I wrote in my first article in that anarchist magazine when I was 16, or was that 15? I can't remember now. One of the two was basically on religion. And it was a critique on religion. I've still got the article somewhere. It's in Greek that I wrote. I kept it. So I've had that sort of struggle. But when it comes to the science, when it comes to empiricism, sort of viewing things in a materialistic way and all that within this space-time environment that I find myself in, that I exist in, I have no problems with evolution, the way the universe works, and the scientific approach. None whatsoever. Mine is welded to that in that regard. And many Orthodox priests that I've spoken to as a youngster, they have the same thing. Now, there are some that we call old calendar types, and, which are a bit more within the Orthodox faith, tend to be the more, conservative, more, they tend to basically be the ones that are more rejectionist towards evolution. But it's not the entire church. Most of the church basically takes a neutral position, saying that which is Caesar's is Caesar's, nothing to do with us. We're not in the business of talking about science. We're in the business of talking about faith and in terms of saving people from darkness and bringing them to the light. That's our purpose. So, and that's the general position of the Greek Orthodox faith. So in a nutshell, so I won't go any more about religion. That was the only, because people have asked me elsewhere on comments and stuff like that. So I wanted to clear the air. I will not be talking about religion again. Okay? Unless it's Tristan here starts asking me questions, only then. But nobody else will. So just to clarify all that and get it out of the way, so it sort of settles everything else. Now let's get back to diet and carnivory.
I appreciate hearing your views like that. It's it's related to what we were talking about as well.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Oh, look, I don't mind, but the thing is, I'm not, this is my faith. If you want to investigate it, look into it, that's your prerogative as a person, as a free person with free will to go and look at these sort of things and decide for your own. Me personally, that's where I stand. I've given an explanation so people can understand. So I've clarified the evolution side, the science side, all that, so people know where I stand on that side, and people know where I stand on my religious side. I just needed to clarify that so people, are aware, and because otherwise you end up with all sorts of speculations and all sorts of the nonsense out there. So I was trying to nip it in the bud, so to speak, if you understand. Yeah. So. Is farmed shellfish good? Should we worry about heavy metals in? Do you want to go with this one?
I was just going to say before we dive back in, I think I need to head to bed soon. It's just past midnight where I am.
Yep. Fair enough.
I'll give it another 5 minutes.
All yours.
Farm shellfish, is it good? I would be highly suspicious of any farmed seafood this day and age, unfortunately. You don't know what they're being fed, and they can certainly be bad for retaining contaminants that's in the water or food supply. It can also matter where they're harvested from, I guess, with certain types of algae creating different types of problems as well. I doubt it's universally, inedible, but if you can get wild caught, that would certainly be preferable.
Yep, I agree, and in that regard, wild is best. But it depends on the source from location. Some locations are cleaner. I'm sure there
is such a thing as good farm shellfish, but on the whole, it's not something that I would choose personally.
Yep. Look, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's hard. Southern Hemisphere is much cleaner. So if you look in Australia, New Zealand as a source, Patagonia, like the bottom of Argentina, those sort of areas, much cleaner. A lot of the, like wild caught fish from the Antarctic and all that is snap frozen, and other sort of areas which are much cleaner around the world. Sourcing is very important. So you've got to look at that. And when it comes to crustaceans, they are very mineral dense, which is good. In terms of heavy metal issues with, it depends where they're actually farmed. So there's a lot of, is there runoff, agricultural runoff? That's the other thing. How close to the coast are they? How much runoff there is? How much agricultural? So what I do is, I know it's a long-winded thing. If I was going to look at farmed as an example, as a, like occasionally, I would basically Google the exact site and then look at what sort of agriculture was around it. If there was no agriculture, very limited, I may consider it I'm not saying I'm recommending it, but I'm saying on a cost base, if somebody was going to look at it that way. And then again, it has to do with some of your detoxification pathways. Now, I've got really high detoxification pathways, which means that I can get away with a bit more indiscretions where other people may not. So, that's the nuanced side of things. So sometimes if you seem to be susceptible, like you try certain things and it doesn't agree with you, you may be one of those people that are much more susceptible. If you tend to not, you know from yourself whether you're one of those people that, with small presses and stresses, you fall apart a bit, or you feel really, pushes you down. If you're one of those people, you're more than likely to have, less the genetics that are not as helpful in that regard. The other thing is people that have got the ApoE4 phenotype also tend to basically have that more fight or flight type effect. So they tend to be more vulnerable as well. So there are those differences in genetics. Now, they are a smaller number, the 4% of the population, but you may be one of those people. So, Ivor Cummings is, Dave Feldman is, so I think both of them are 4-3s from memory, so yeah, so there's can be a bit complicated in that regard. Sometimes with these things, it's not an easy sort of, that was fun. I just lost my... Oops. Where am I?
Time is it? Yeah. I think I need to. To go to bed.
Not a problem.
Yep. Been trying not to push it too far past midnight.
Some parts of the North Sea are highly polluted, like the Baltic Sea as well. So it depends which parts. Parts up in Norway, which is further into the northern part, which is further away from their oil production facilities, is less of a problem. So really, things around Iceland tend to be pretty good. So, or around Greenland as well, on the other side of the Atlantic. But then around the northern part of the, Scotland and place like that, it depends on the areas. Scotland pretty much has a lot of pristine areas. You don't have a lot of pollutants, especially, but there are areas where there is a bit more pollution than others, where there's more population centres and all that. So it's, it's hard to actually say. And then you've got also stuff coming out of the Baltic Sea, sort of their, I'm trying to remember now. Oh God, there's actually currents under the water. You can actually find the maps and look at the currents, how they flow out of the Baltic into the North Sea. Look at those currents, and that will tell you the sort of band or area you need to avoid, those sort of areas that are getting affected. And, look at further south in certain other areas on the east coast of Scotland. So that's what I would recommend, getting that information. I can't remember the website. You'd have to Google it.
Okay. I am
mate,
signing off for the evening.
I appreciate your co-hosting. It's been fun.
This is fun. I appreciate you having me each week. This is a lot of fun. I look forward to it.
No. I think my followers enjoy it. A bit of the banter and all that. So we take a light-hearted side to things as much as possible. Sometimes we get a bit serious. Me in particular.
I don't think you should apologize for talking about religion or anything like that either. I think it's important for some people to understand the sort of paradigm that frames your approach.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe I get a bit too paranoid about those things, and because I don't want me to become the main focus. sort of the message. I'm not the focus. Bart isn't the focus. It's the science. It's the message. That should be the main focus. I mean, that's why
you're definitely correct not to focus on that. But I just mean if the conversation happens to drift there, I don't think it's necessarily something that needs to be avoided. And
you're right.
If people are offended by that, they need to seriously check their priorities in life. I think because it's not anything to be upset about, in my opinion.
No, you're right. You're right in that regard. Yes, well. I agree with you, Butter.
Yeah, that was Saffron, actually. My
the other one.
Siamese here. This one. She only comes up when I'm way past where I should be. This one
very cute cat.
She's going to be 18 years old in June, and she gets lots of raw ground beef and liver in her diet. Nothing to say though, Safi? No, she doesn't want to be held.
I think she made her comment.
Yeah, that's right.
Where are you? Why aren't you off this?
That's pretty much it. Well, have a good night, Harry, or a good day for you where you are. I mean,
yeah, it's basically 2:15 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
so 2 p.m. Mid. Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. You have a good sleep. And
I'll see you next week.
Definitely. See you then.
Okay.
And, thanks for your support of this channel, and take care. And I did enjoy your music. It's good to see you practicing.
Yeah, I can do a song here on one of your streams coming up if you like.
Fantastic. That sounds great. And guys, go over and, watch the music that Jared's been playing, that he's practicing and stuff like that. Like it, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed. So
Yeah, that last video I posted was just for fun. That was just a single run through of a single take kind of thing. It literally just took me 2 minutes in front of the computer. So I need to do more shorter ones like that.
That's it. Some of us enjoy it. Okay, take care. See you, mate.
Thanks, Harry.
Well, back to it. I better find my spot. As you know, I've sort of probably lost my spot. Emotional balance cruise. Don't get too excited. Okay, more comments. You're welcome, chick. Dr. Cole said, snake diet cured his herpes. Claims. Oh, okay. Don't know. Look, fasting does help because, at the end of the day, fasting, resolve a lot of things. It cleans up a lot of debris, a lot of garbage. It sort of helps, improve your immune response and stuff like that. So, yep, it can help. But I don't know enough about his pre-existing conditions, other things in his diet. So, hard to say, but I don't think you have to go to some of the steps that some people do, but yeah. Where I live, local fish monger delivers fresh caught fish in a van. Okay. Yep, you're welcome, mate. Appreciate all the, handy work and all that. If okay. Well, I sort of make it's also for me to basically, just point out who I am, what my beliefs are, so you guys know where I'm coming from. It's not to basically, force anything down anybody's throat or say that, you should be doing what I do. That's your issue. Do I discuss any herbal stuff? Look, herbal stuff is just basically all it is hermetic effects. There are certain types of toxins, because that's what they are, let's be honest, and certain types of things that can actually upregulate glutathione. That's where their purpose. But you can exercise and upregulate glutathione. You can do a whole lot of things. I think it's an expensive way of actually getting the same result. Yep. Okay, that's a different sort of. I didn't realize that some people in the Jewish faith do. I mean, there was a sort of a Christ sort of group within the Jewish faith that sort of survived for some time, and then sort of has sort of waned here and there. But yeah, so yeah, I had no idea that they were still around. Yeah, I try to keep it as balanced as possible, in that regard, so because it's easy to sort of to go on a sort of tangent and all that sort of stuff. Let me just see whether I've missed any actually nutritional questions. I'm just backing up a bit. What was that? I swim a bit. Yeah, we go. Yep. Yeah, that's good that you're actually trying to avoid. It's good to hear. Yeah, you don't want to put him at risk. Yep. Anything else we've got? Let me just go back to the bottom. Okay, curious about your thoughts on painkillers. I sort of mentioned it earlier that not a good thing. If you're seriously, yeah, look, the problem is they do impede. I would rather use for pain like warm baths with Epsom salts, or you do other things like like heat packs and stuff like that. That would be much better for you. It also accelerate the improvement of your health. Plus, at the same time, it would basically because if you take painkillers, you're going to reduce the effect of the fever. You're actually counteracting the body's natural ability to fight it. I know it's hard, and so what I've used in the past is things like hot water bottles, and other sort of, there's a number of, there's some Chinese sort of stuff where you can put it on your skin and all that, and sort of heats up the skin and sort of, then it cools down and sort of helps relieve some of that pain. And there's like heat packs and heat adhesives that can also help as well. There's a number of things like that are much better in sort of relieving sort of a tension and pain and all that. And in that, because what you do is if you take too many of these painkillers, what you're going to do is you're going to slow down the ability for the body to heal itself. Sort of increasing the temperature and a bit of pain is part of the body's natural way of sort of healing itself. I know it's, so by having these sort of, Epsom salt bars, to sort of, sort of relieve the tension, because you will feel tension, you will feel uncomfortable in that regard. So that can help. And then heat packs can also relieve some of the localized sort of pain in different parts of your body and all that. I know it's not a perfect, there is no perfect answer for these things. I mean, it's sort of weighing, do I take some paracetamol, some sort of, and end up prolonging the illness, or not, or do I just bite the bullet? There's no simple answer to these sort of things. I would go with were there painkillers 10,000 years ago? No. People used these other things in their environment. So, yeah. I never understood rancidity is just peroxidation, or that is rancid. Yeah, that's, what we call lipid peroxidation is that sort of rancidity, is where basically the double bonds in like omega-6s, for instance, will basically be damaged. Oxygen can go into there. There's no vitamin. There's no that stripping away of those electrons, and there is no vitamin E there to basically, as an electron donor, to sort of stabilize that. So you sort of, what happens is these things are degraded, and as a consequence, they, that's what we call rancid oils. Peroxidation also is, the body itself, can create it in order to basically kill off something. So, in that regard. But when we're talking about lipid peroxidation, which is what you're really, I believe, talking about, is basically when you have this rancidity and damaged lipids in your LDL or VLDL, IDL, LDL, because that's, as it shrinks, becomes smaller. And there's some of the best mechanistic studies that actually showed that were back in 83 and 84. I've spoken with Bart about those before, about nearly a year ago. So, yeah, so it's basically, that's a sort of crude answer about in regards to that. They are things to avoid, basically, Could changing the diet to carnivore help with eyesight? Yep, it will, because you've basically got, your melanopsin in your eyes, there's two things. One, you have to get yourself into a circadian sort of rhythm. That's one thing. And then the other thing is you need the fat soluble vitamins to help with eyesight. So and you'll get plenty of in that. Now, if you've got some level of degeneration, you may need to consider stem cell sort of therapy. Now, this is an untargeted approach, unfortunately. So there's, let's say you've got a bad heart and you've got bad eyesight. Well, the body's going to prioritize life over loss of, vision. So it will basically prioritize pushing those stem cells to help improve the heart or the brain or some other critical part of the body. So in that regard, I would say looking at something like a stem cell therapy that, go to Bart's site, he's actually got information there. Right at the bottom of his video list, there's actually one there that talks about this one. It's an untargeted thing. So, and there are no guarantees about it. I know a lot of people talk about it as fantastic, like the next coming or something like that, but it's not. It's for Bart, who only had an eyesight problem of macular degeneration. It targeted there and improved his eyesight. So it did work for him. And that's why he became convinced that it does work. But he realized, once he started looking into it, that it's untargeted. So you may have to take it for a much prolonged period where you end up healing other parts of your body, which isn't a bad thing. And then basically, but also remember, there's other things you can do. Fasting. See, on a carnivore or low carb diet or whatever, fasting is much easier. Fasting actually helps improve autophagy, cleaning out cellular debris and improving eyesight, everything, all sorts of function. So fasting is another repair mechanism in that regard. Animal-based food is very important. I mean, even arachidonic acid, which is an omega-6 from animal sources, has important repair mechanisms. It's not only the inflammatory, that it supports the inflammatory system of the body, which is also important, the difference is with arachidonic acid from animal foods, it also helps in repair, cellular repair. So it plays a big role. So in that regard, animal foods will make a big difference. The fat-soluble vitamins will definitely make, because, a lot of these structures have collagen, or your body has collagen-degrading enzymes that proliferate in certain tissues, can degrade and break down tissue and structures. So regulated matrix metalloproteinase, as they're called, will basically make sure that these parts of the body are rebuilt, reconfigured back to close to what they used to be. Obviously, how well that's done has to do with your nutrition and your other indiscretions that you do from now onwards, because it's a constant struggle between repair and damage. And as we get older, repair becomes less efficient and damage increases until basically you're snuffed out. I know it's a long-winded reply, but yeah, very important. Yep, retinol, which is the animal form in that regard. And yep, it's very good. Organ meats are really good, particular liver. And also MK4, you may consider as a short-term supplement. I would not supplement with vitamin A, because it's not really like the natural form, and it can be damaging to the liver. So I would stick to foods, and there is plenty of animal foods that are very high in vitamin A. Problem is with MK4, there aren't as much. Brie is really good because 100% MK4, but a lot of and liver is really good in eggs. So I would incorporate all those, because you need extra cholesterol, you need extra those. So basically your diet should incorporate eggs, liver, these sort of things, other organ meats as well, like heart, which has got far more mitochondrial density. So it actually provides precursors for additional mitochondria, and you probably need that as well. So that's what I would be focused on. You could also, fasting and exercise help with upregulating, the amount of mitochondrial biosynthesis. There are other things, for instance, like PQQ. You can get in a supplement form that also is a nutraceutical that it's a substance that actually increases sort of the biogenesis of new mitochondria. It's, I think, the highest plant form is, which has got about 60, can't remember, 60 something, between 30 and 60 something micrograms of basically PQQ. Is celery. I'm not recommending celery, and basically the next one I think is cocoa. But raw milk, pasteurized, is shit, because in pasteurized you get 0.6. It's destroyed. But in raw milk you can get up to 170 micrograms, which is basically shits all over celery and everything else in terms of PQQ and helping with biogenesis of mitochondria. Then, stearic, and in particular stearic acid, which is one of the long chain saturated fats, that also induces reverse electron transport. So does palmitate. It's a different gradient. The ratio. So yeah, is different. So I'm going to do a video on that. I'm at some stage and explain all the different pathways. I've been talking now for over a year about a reverse electron transport, how that is important. And meat, red meat in particular, has higher amounts of those types of fatty acids that induce more biogenesis. So and so reverse electron transport basically means that forces the actual to send a signaling molecule to and to basically get that sort of split of the mitochondria into creating more of itself. in that regard. So, yes, so those are that's a long-winded way, but anyway, I think I'll leave it at that. I'll go on forever otherwise. Yep. You're welcome. I haven't eaten liver before, but basically just swallow it. Look, whatever works for you. In that regard. So, look, different people consume it in different ways. It's really up to, I sometimes have raw, I sometimes have fermented, and sometimes I have cooked. So I'm all over the place when it comes to liver. I like it in different ways, but that's me. Can't help myself. Oops. Yeah, that's the other way. Yeah, you can take it as like little. Yeah, a lot of people do that as well. I've heard. You can also buy little containers. I do that, like little containers where I'll put, and then I'll throw that and incorporate another meal. But like put in a soup and let it dissolve in the soup. So you've got a soup like an egg soup or stuff like that, and then you basically throw it in and just let it thaw out in that, and sort of lightly cook it in that regard. Very important to know the quality. If it's pastured, it's safe. If, you really need to know the quality when it comes to organ meats. So keep that in mind. My mother-in-law has macular degeneration. Okay, has medicine that was meant to help that. It runs in the family. Look, runs in a number of families, but the reality is it's not really genetic. Some people are more susceptible because of their genes, but it's not driven by genetics. If you go back 100 years, even more, 120 years to 100 years, there was probably one or two cases in the whole of the United States. It was unknown or unheard of. And they used to have basically atlases. So people's eyes were actually, atlases were created from them that, and it was only in the mid 1920s or late 1920s, I can't remember exactly, when there was the first documented, that means scientifically documented macular degeneration. So it was a very unknown thing. And up until the 1990s or mid-1990s, I think it was, in Japan, they believed macular degeneration never existed. And basically many people, especially American academics, thought that the Japanese were immune to macular degeneration. Weren't they wrong? The moment they westernized their diet through that period, macular degeneration started increasing the population. And guess what was introduced? It wasn't sugar because it was already there. Seed oils. That is what is causing macular degeneration. It's the seed oils. So there's nothing else in the food supply other than seed oils. And when they're introduced anywhere in the world, there are a number of societies around the world which have got high levels of carbohydrates and even refined carbs where they've got diabetes and stuff like that, but very low levels where they're using tropical oil still, very low macular degeneration. And then you've got some other islanders in the Pacific who have got very high levels of macular degeneration. Oh, sorry, not in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, and got very high levels. What's the difference? One has sugar and seed oils. It's the seed oils, basically. So, basically those lipid membranes are incorporating these rancid oils into their structures, and that is what's causing the problem. So now that you know that it's the seed oils, make sure that she's not eating any foods, any packaged shit that basically has those seed oils. Next thing, low dose vitamin E. I don't recommend But in these sort of cases, it takes about 4 to 6 years, I've mentioned it before, in order to basically clear stored out PUFA. So basically she needs to go on, the Jarrow, the vitamin E, the 19 milligrams, the low dose. We don't want high dose. We don't want to cause imbalances in fat-soluble vitamins. So basically get her on that for the next 6 years, especially in her case. And basically make sure there are no seed oils anywhere. And if she's going to a restaurant and stuff like that, she may need to avoid anything with a dressing on, or anything that anything that basically fries or anything like that. Keep hella away from those sort of things, and just basically buy a steak salad, bring her own salad dressing if she's inclined to eat that sort of stuff, because you can't force people to become carnivores. So that's the sort of thing that I would recommend that she sort of go. It's not medical advice, but it's my opinion, what I would do if I was in her position, because basically if you keep on putting the poison in, whether it's from a restaurant or at home by buying the stuff from a supermarket, you will suffer. You're welcome, mate. Yep, that also would help. That's what Bart used. So get in contact with Bart, find out how to get your hands on it. Everything helps. Diet, these sort of things. Oh well, that's an opinion. Basically, Greeks have been eating organ meats for thousands of years. We've got kukuretsi and many other sort of dishes, friganella, which is sort of little bits of liver on coal, cooked, really nice. God, it's crunchy. It loses half of its nutrition, but it's really crunchy, and you can really eat quite a few of those. So it makes a difference. Eggs are good, don't get me wrong, but but liver's got far more nutrients. With the eggs are better with a protein profile. The protein profile of eggs is superior in some regards. It's got more glycine in the white parts. So it has a number of things, more collagen type of amino acids. So in that regard, yeah, it's got a better profile on the amino side, where liver on the micronutrient side has a better profile. So both are important. Lamb's heart is nice. Yeah, look, it is nice. Good for, it's packed with the sort of nutrients like coenzyme Q10, very important for your mitochondria. It's the most dense organ meat in coenzyme Q10. So, yeah, I would definitely incorporate that. I'm glad it does. Pooch needs nutrition as well. Somebody got something wrong. Oops. Yeah, it's confusing. So many damn dragons. Yep. A lot of these things blow my mind as well. You're welcome, Shelley. Yep. Look, sort of, yeah, it's definitely those nasty oils. Yeah, they've polluted the whole food supply. Sugars existed from ancient times in India, and there are descriptions by medical doctors in India at the time of basically, the sort of, I'll just put up the other banner. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So a lot of the physicians back then, because that was the only country that the rich could afford, it was more valuable than gold. So refined sugar was a product that was developed in India for the ruling classes, and it wasn't used extensively. It was used, but it did cause diabetes. In some of them that overindulged in fructose and caused fatty liver and stuff like that. So it's the fastest way to get fatty liver, fructose. But in general terms, it wasn't the big killer. Communicable diseases up until the middle part of you could say the 20th century even, were basically the communicable diseases, which we sort of nipped in the bud with vaccinations and antibiotics and stuff like that. Yes, we've misused those things, I agree, but the thing is, they save more than they harm. So in that regards, they're a net benefit. It's the same thing with fluoridation. It sort of saves more from cholera and all sorts of other things than it harms. Yes, it does cause problems with your thyroid. You should be basically using iodine. You should be basically filtering and then putting back minerals. There's a lot of things that we should be doing and all that sort of stuff. You should be hydrating more with fat rather than dehydrating with sugar. So there's a lot of things that we don't do right that basically cause us all sorts of grief in the modern world. Inappropriate diets exacerbate everything. So it's sort of a synergy of sin, so to speak, in that regard. Anyway, guys, oops. Yeah, sort of, I don't have Jared here sort of keeping an eye on this, or Luke. How many others were? Nope. See, when I lose my helpers. Yeah. I mean, especially because a lot of them have still got the skin on and all the anti-nutrients there and sort of the acrylamide, things. It's, just damaging to your body. Yeah, look, there's so many things that you can actually say about all sorts of things and nuanced things and stuff like that. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things, and I wish I had the time, but I don't, to basically make shitloads of videos on all sorts of subjects and demystify a lot of things. It's my goal, ultimately. It's my early days on YouTube and all that, so I'm still sort of learning how to do things and all that. I've still got to edit those other videos that I got off Bart, so I've got a few things that I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Luckily, I'm not at work tomorrow, so I'm off. I may get an impromptu message from Bart. You want to come on? You may be doing something and want me on there, so you may see me tomorrow. I don't know, no idea. He's a bit like that. And if I'm, at home, I'll probably will jump on, say a few things, pass the time. Yes. So look, I'm going to leave it at here. It's because I'm getting close to basically, thanks. I'm getting close to my sort of with StreamYard, my sort of how many, because I did the Corona stuff and a couple of other things. It's sort of, I lost a lot of time. So I'm only going to have next week about probably 2 hours and something. So next week is going to be slightly truncated and shorter. We're nearly up to 3 hours now, so because I'm going to be running, I'll run out of time. What I'll do is I'll just run it until it, and I'll let you know then. So when it actually goes off, that I've hit 20 hours and that's it. I've got no more time, so I'll have to wait for, luckily, the following, after next week, the following week, what happens is I get reset in the middle of the week, which is fine. I'm back to normal. So, yes. So that's sort of the program. Thanks, guys. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed having Jared as a co-host for most of it, because he's always good value. He's got something, to say, something different from me, thankfully, and also has some different ways of viewing things, which sort of help. So please do, like and subscribe as well, and share this video. Mention to speak. Look, I think it will. I think basically your immune system, your health. I mean, you think about it. Zinc, really important for your immune system. Selenium, really important for your immune system. Carnitine, inhibiting through your lymphatic system, viruses. You look at all these elements of basically, cholesterol, the healing effects of cholesterol. You look at all the parts of the carnivore diet, they are very helpful. They're nutrient dense, and the body needs the fat soluble vitamins, and needs all the minerals and vitamins to basically mount its defense of the body and to heal it. So very important. So in that regard, I think it's very important. So keep that in mind. Take care, guys. Thanks. Good night, good day, wherever you are. Keep safe. Try to help your families as much as possible with some of this information. Try to get rid of the seed oils, which is, I know sugar is going to be hard for your families, but at least get rid of the seed oils. Encourage them to go and buy a bottle of, of even olive oil. I would always recommend much better, palm oil from ethical sources from South America, or basically coconut oil. But if they can't, even extra virgin olive oil is better than the other crap that they've got. So it's not perfect. And if they're going to use extra virgin olive oil, tell them low heat. So you don't want it high heat. It's better not to. It's better to use something like that, or animal foods in particular, lard, tallow, these sort of things. But ghee is another. Maybe ghee is an easier thing. I've always sort of steered a lot of people to ghee because it's a halfway house. It's really hard to get people on lard and tallow. But ghee, you say, well, vegetarians cook with this. You can be deceptive with your family. If you're going to basically get them to, just tell them, oh, vegetarians use ghee. The whole subcontinent of India uses ghee. They've been using it for thousands of years. What are you concerned about? And then at least they're having a high quality animal. They're getting fat soluble vitamins. They're getting MK4, vitamin E, retinol. They're even getting a bit of vitamin D. They're getting, really good stuff. That's what you want to do. You don't have to tell them. Don't give them too much information. Sometimes that scares them off. Just tell them that basically vegetarian, if they disagree with you on ghee, so vegetarians use it. What's wrong with you? And they think, oh, vegetarians are eating vegetables, they must be healthy. Let them, play on that sort of attitude. It does work. Believe me, I have done it on the people that I know. They went and bought ghee, fantastic. Anyway, take care, guys. Good night, good day, and see yous next week. Same time. Bye.